Okay, thank you all for joining us today. As you may know, I am Mark Myman, and welcome to the next episode of the On the Mark Financial Forum and Podcast. My good friend Stephanie Genkin is going to be joining us on screen here. Hello, Stephanie. How are you?
Hello. Yes, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure.
So today we're going to be talking about the emotional side of money, which is a really important topic that people really don't talk about enough. And we see it every day in our mortgage practice where, couples may have different nuances about how they approach money. And I think there's an effective way to approach it that Stephanie, you're as good as any, if not the best person to be telling us more about it. So thank you, Stephanie, for joining us. Maybe you can give a little introduction for who you are. I mean, I know who you are, but for the audience,
Yeah,
would be great to get to know a little bit more about you.
happy to do it. So I come from the journalism world, to be honest. And so I love a good narrative. And I think that's probably what drew me to financial therapy is people have stories. And as a journalist, I was always very interested in the story. How did we get here? What motivated you? And so when I became a financial planner, I carried that curiosity with me into the planning world. And what we learn as financial planners, I'm a certified financial planner, is how to handle the technical aspect of money. So, what do you need to save for retirement? What's a reasonable investment for you? How much cash should you have saved? Can you afford to buy a house? And if not now, how do we get you there, right? Or for a down payment. And so these are all very cut and dry aspects of money. And then the problem is when you're working with individuals, they show up differently than the textbook, and they have past experiences, and they have fears, and they have guilt, and they have expectations. And those expectations are often different than their partners. So I kind of jumped the gun a little bit because I was excited about the topic, and I could obviously go on and on about it. But I'm a certified financial planner. I'm a certified divorce financial analyst. Talk about emotions and money. Woo, if you haven't been in
For
one of
sure.
these sessions, it's big. I'm a certified financial therapist level 1, and the reason it's level 1 is that they're still building out the program. So I hope as they build the plane, we'll fly in it, right? And so also I just finished the training, the coursework to become a certified financial transitionist, which is helping people navigate major transitions in their lives. And so I dabble in both the technical and the human side of money because that's how most people show up.
Yeah, no, we see it all the time in mortgages. We see clients who don't want their significant other to know about debt that they have, and they want to keep the application separate, or family members, maybe a parent signing with an adult child who they don't want to share their financial information. So there's definitely an important component to the emotions surrounding money and how people spend it and save it and whatnot. So and I always commend you for going after all these certifications that really help you analyze those situations and help clients navigate them. So I appreciate you spending the time. I know you're very busy, you have a very active practice, and I love what you do with clients. I've seen it firsthand, and I'm excited to share it with our audience. So today our topic is going to be primarily on financial therapy, because I don't think many people know that this actually exists,
It's a pretty
or
new
what it
field,
is.
Mark. It's a
Yeah,
pretty new field. So it's understandable that people are like, I get that a lot, like, wait, that's a thing? And so
right.
think about it this way. You would go to a therapist, and many of my clients do, and talk about family relationships and personal relationships and work and things like that. But what I've noticed is that many therapists are very uncomfortable when it comes close to money. That's partly because many therapists have their own issues with money.
Right.
If you look into the landscape of the training of mental health professionals, there there's no university in the country that has a module specifically on money. So there's this big void in the field. And in 2008, in the financial crisis, basically, the people who came together to really serve a population that was now traumatized by money, and it was becoming more and more apparent to people, financial professionals, financial planners, financial counselors came together with mental health professionals who were interested in sort of bridging that gap. And that was really the formation of the Financial Therapy Association. So we're basically made up more or less evenly between people who come from the mental health side and people who come from the financial planning side. And a new profession is emerging, and this is called financial therapy. But when you think of how young it is, I mean, it really doesn't go back that far. But great that it was started when it was, because then in the pandemic and the shutdown, you better believe that if you already weren't whacked by the financial crisis of 2008, a whole bunch of new stuff came up during the pandemic, and we still see it today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I don't have any official statistics, but I think it's a it's a common assumption that most relationships fall apart because of money, or that's one of the leading causes, because people aren't on the same page, or they, don't understand it, or they don't understand where people are coming from and why they have certain tendencies to either spend or save or invest or whatever it may be. So it's a really interesting topic for me because
Mark, I just want to say one thing, that the money is the sort of outside veneer of not being on the same page. But when you sort of peel back the layers, problems that couples have are in values and experiences and beliefs. And it just shows up in the money really strongly. But it's not really the money that is first and foremost the problem. It's the most obvious sign for couples that, oh, we have a problem here.
Yeah, for sure. And so when you're going through a session with a client who's doing financial therapy, how does that look different than just a regular financial planning session where you're looking at more of the technical side?
So that's a great question. And I think, as you know, last time I checked, there were less than 100 of us who who were certified financial therapists through the Financial Therapy Association. Now, anybody can call themselves a financial therapist, just not the certified part.
Mhm.
And just like anybody can call themselves a financial planner without the certified part, right? But so how I practice is very different from a lot of my colleagues who hold the same designation, but maybe come from the mental health side. So for me, what would distinguish it is really how you identify, because I'm not somebody who's going to meet with a client and say, you need financial therapy. That's not what this is. So when I have an intake form on my website, and when you come, because you have some financial planning things that you want to do, right now the way I'm set up is just like you might check that you want help with investings or home buying or getting ready for a home purchase or divorce planning, you may find yourself checking the financial therapy box. And so I would say more than half of my clients check that box. And maybe it's out of curiosity, or maybe it's more that they know that they have some issues that are preventing them from moving forward. So when you come to me, you're not like lying on a couch and I'm telling you, asking you when did these troubles start. It's really then if the financial therapy is an issue for you, and actually I do this with all clients, I start by sending some forms in addition to getting your financial information so we can evaluate it in terms of what you're trying to do in the planning process. I also have a money survey, also called a client's money script inventory. And it is diagnostically tested to find out what you believe about money. And there are no right or wrong answers. We all believe what we believe. And there's about 30 questions, and whether it shows up that you strongly believe in it or you don't believe in it at all. So we have a range of things. And there are some groupings where I can tell, are you money avoidant? Are you money vigilant? Do you believe that your net worth is your self-worth? Do you believe that you can't be happy unless you have a lot of money? And that's sort of a jumping off point, but it's also in the specificity of what some of the questions of what you believe that I will gently touch and just say, tell me about that belief and where did this come from? And how do you think it impacts, what you do with money and your behavior? So I'm inviting a conversation, and depending on how open and curious my clients are, we might get to something very fundamental, even in the first meeting. Other clients, it doesn't even take this. They are coming right out of the gate. I have this financial trauma because of X, Y, and Z, or I don't really think I'm worthy of money. And so some are they've been seeing their own therapists and it's come up, and now this is the next iteration of it. So I could always tell when a client has been working on these issues or maybe dancing around it with a regular therapist, because there is a certain amount of awareness and then we can go deeper right away. But for me, from the financial planning side, I have a blend of helping people move forward with their money, as well as trying to discuss and treat and understand the wounds that they've come with and how to make it better for them. So right now, I'm not practicing just financial therapy. Although if somebody asked me, I would certainly be open to it. And I have had a few clients in the past. But mostly what I'm doing is helping people become more comfortable and enjoy their money more and understand what money means to them in the planning process to get them where they're going.
Yeah, and it's people do kind of tie in their emotional happiness with the balance in their accounts. We definitely see that, and people obviously get stressed when the balances go lower, and they become happier when the balances go higher. But money doesn't buy happiness, as they say, so there's more to that.
Right. And Mark, to your point, you can look at somebody on paper, like I'll think of a client in specific. He has more than $15 million, not a lavish lifestyle, kids' college education already accounted for, right? And yet he's miserable with his money.
Yeah.
So you could have done all the right things: homeowner, great neighborhood, very low interest rate, able to make the payments. So you would think that, more money makes you more happy. And yet there's this, he's ill at ease with his money. It has not made him happy. And I think maybe 10 years ago, if you told him he'd have this amount of money, he'd say, oh, I'm going to retire. I'm the happiest guy. But a funny thing happens on the way to living your life. The goalpost moves, and there's always people who have more money than you. And so in his case, there is some inadequacy, there's some unresolved issue, and money is not filling that void.
Yeah, and sometimes that can be within the family, even deeper, I would imagine. Like if one sibling, is financially better off than another, there can be resentments and, inheritances that may be not perfectly balanced 50-50 between two siblings or something like that. But yeah, it's a really interesting topic for me because of when we get a loan application, it's just like the intake form for us. We take in the application, but there's so much more. And we always say we joke, obviously we're not licensed therapists, but we say we do 90% therapy and 10% mortgage advising.
But you really cut to a point, like your willingness to understand the people, the lives of people who are trying to buy the house. This is an important aspect of understanding this. In both of our professions, I think to be as best as we possibly can to serve a client, we can't ignore these things. I have other friends who are financial planners, and they're like, you talk about that in a session? Like they couldn't imagine, it wasn't on the CFP exam. They would never talk about that. But like the human side of money is what drives everything.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned transitions. That's a really important part of it, because that's usually when I would imagine it really comes to light, and people are, the light is shining right on those issues, and they really are almost forced to address them. So I
Yeah,
can
and
see why you
sometimes they
have
don't
both of
want
those
to.
designations.
Yeah, sometimes people don't want to, but when you, then they can cut both ways, like really happy things or unhappy things. Like, think about how deeply your identity changes in a divorce or even in a lottery winning situation, right? You would
I'm
think
still
that.
waiting for that to happen, by the way. I haven't bought tickets in a while, so my odds are pretty not very good, but
Right, if you got to play to win it, right?
right.
But like in the divorce situation, there's a lot of negative emotions about, your identity transition, where you would think that in a lottery win or a promotion or, a career change that you might feel better about the identity change, but it still comes with emotional aspects, and preparing the money for the new identity in the life is very much connected to that.
Yeah, oh, for sure, without question. So why don't let's dive into that. It was a little later in my notes, but I think it's relevant to
Mhm.
kind of talk about some of these issues that you see. So let's take, people coming together in marriage, living together, and also divorce, because it's kind of the yin and the yang of coming together or spreading apart. But what do you typically see, and how does financial therapy play a role in that?
Right. So I'll think of clients that were recently had a baby, and the partner, I don't think they're married, the partner, one of them is very high up in his career. Was previously divorced, and also, has child support and marital support for another family. And he had some debt, and he's navigating now with his new partner and a baby, and feels that just this next milestone of bonuses will help him pay off things and start to save. So for him, the whole thing to move forward is just if he could make a little bit more money, and however it comes in this lump sum, everything will be fine. And the partner has a lot of feelings about money that, and some of them are very political, like how you navigate a world that's not, really fair, and seeing people who have less than you and things like that. There's some guilt on her part that her career hadn't taken off previously. She spent, like a young person in New York previously, wasting money, that her words, not mine. And now she feels like because she's not the moneyed spouse, that she's not taken as seriously and doesn't even have the right to sort of be heard and bring up issues. And so it's facilitating a discussion around that dynamic so that each side can hear what the other one is struggling with, and then coming to a point where here's something small you can do in a money discussion next week to get on the same page. So
Right.
I don't have a magic wand to fix things all in one meeting, but we really do work, first of all, to find out what's underneath all of these things, and then make sure that each side has heard each other, and then to come up with something doable and to see how that partnership works.
Yeah, I recently saw a social media post from Dave Ramsey, who I'm not a huge fan of. I think
Me
he gives
neither.
good advice for certain things, but
Mhm.
not necessarily across the board. But sorry, Dave, if you're listening. But um, there was somebody that called into his show, and it was a woman who was about to get married, and she said, "Well, how do I split my finances when we get married?" And clearly she had like a me type of approach. Like, I want to keep, because my husband has some debt and I don't want to take on his debt. How do you do that? And his answer was basically that everything is combined when you're married and you need to shift your mindset. But I think that's a good example of how, when you join forces, so to speak, you have to let some of those emotional things go a little bit, where, one may have a stronger financial background than another, and one of them like to spend money and has no issue with debt, and others work very hard to not have any debt.
Well,
So
one
it's
thing
an
I want to
interesting
just say
example.
about that is that a lot of couples come to me before they tie the knot. to be able to talk about these things. And one of the interesting things that I have found is that sometimes when they fill out the financial checklist, and then we're going to have a conversation about, what we each believe and how to organize the money, that sometimes in the financial checklist is the first time that each one knows what the other one earns.
Yes.
Which
Earns and debt that they have. I imagine it's all like just opening the curtain, which is difficult.
It's
If you don't
difficult,
like,
and
if you're
I
feeling
feel really
uncomfortable about what's
privileged
behind it.
that they're doing that with me, because that this is an opportunity for me to create a safe space for them to process and digest and even ask questions to help them understand how they come together with this, so that you're not left on your own going, oh my God, I didn't know you had all that debt. And of course, there's, sometimes feelings of shame that come up about what we earn or what we spend. And I want to just be in a shame-free world to the extent that I can, to help people navigate these and understand where some of these behaviors come from and how we might want them to change when we partner, and how we are interested in our partner's family history to understand, oh, I didn't understand that impact that might have had on you.
Yeah. Well, one other area that we see it, and we started a bridge loan program that's specifically designed to help seniors and people who are later
Very
in life. Another really interesting dynamic where now the money of the parents is quote unquote at stake, and you might have siblings that are kind of battling, or if they, what we usually encounter is related to real estate. So if the parents or parent owns a home and one of the children wants to sell it, the other one wants to keep it because they have an emotional attachment to it, even if it doesn't make sense to keep it. There's another like component with aging family members that kind of brings this up again between siblings that can be a little difficult to navigate.
And I just want to tell you that I am not immune to it. I had my own situation this past year, and I just want to say that going back to my financial therapist to deal with these family issues between siblings was one of the best things that I did. And so I feel like if you're looking for a financial therapist and even a financial planner, I think it's really important that you work with somebody who's done their own work, because how deep can they go with you if they haven't uncovered their own stuff?
It's so true. I say this all the time to people when, they're comparing mortgage people and trying to decide who to use. And, I'm very transparent about my own real estate, and I talk about it on the podcast. I talk about it with clients all the time. I'm very, very open book, because that's how I feel like people are going to learn. But there are a lot of people in my industry who don't own homes. They've never taken a mortgage themselves. And I can tell you, when you're going through it yourself, even for the first time, or I mean, I've probably gotten 20 mortgages over the years. Wow. It's different. All the things you tell your clients, oh, don't worry about this, this will be fine, don't worry about that. When you're going through it yourself, it's a whole different experience. And all the things I tell my clients not to worry about, I worry about. Right. Oh, interest rates will settle, and then I'm like, oh, what should I do today? Should I lock in my rate or not lock in my rate? It's the same challenges. But you're right.
We're all human.
Yeah, exactly. But having that experience is so important. And I know, you've shared some of those family details with me, and it makes us stronger when we go through it ourselves.
It also creates empathy, and if you don't have a level of empathy for clients and hold them in high regard, regardless of what they're going through, there's something that's just not effective. It's not just like a drive-through service where you hand somebody burgers and fries. Like, there is a human connection happening here about this, because you're holding all of someone's hopes and dreams and fears.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a lot of these life events like, aging parents, or inheritance, or succession planning for business owners. Right. And, there's a whole TV series about it, Succession, right? Which is actually a really interesting thing. And I have someone in my network who basically coaches families through that
Wow.
very difficult transition. And it was funny to hear him talk about how it's actually very real. What you see in that show Succession is very much what it's like, power grabs. And, fortunately, everybody on this call will maybe be in that position to have a situation like that, or maybe unfortunate enough. But there's a lot of these transitional moments that really can put you in the spotlight on how to deal with these issues. And I know a lot of it, for our everyday clients, like I put myself in this category, trying to manage spending and debt, just day-to-day finances for
Right.
quote unquote everyday people like us. You can have just different perspectives. And that's when I think, like, maybe we could talk a little bit more about maybe your experience with just, younger couples or married couples that are kind of struggling with that, and how you help them through that.
Yeah. I have to bring up one issue now because it just came to a conclusion, a very happy conclusion on Friday. I had been working with a gentleman for almost 10 years. Even before I was certified, we were talking about debt, and he had very large student loan debt, over $400,000 of student loan debt. First person in his family to ever go to college, and was really looking to me towards how will I ever save for retirement, for a family, for everything else with this debt. And there had really been nobody who was able to advise him, I think, in terms of scholarships and interest rates and how debt's paid back. So, I mean, he graduated from a very prestigious college with an MBA, 2 master's degrees, an undergraduate, and here he was. But long story short, we did a lot of work around emotions and planning around money. And this was even before I was a financial therapist. I'm a human first, and I understood what he wanted. And when Biden redid the public service loan forgiveness, streamlining the application process to help more people who legitimately qualified check all those boxes, I really pushed him to do it. And he was not aware, as somebody in the public sector, that he was even applicable. He thought it was only for nonprofit. And long story short, I really sat on him to do all of the paperwork. And Friday at 5 o'clock, he emailed me with the forgiveness letter of $360,000.
Wow.
Life
Yeah,
change,
that's a great story. But
life change.
what I take away, part of what I take away from that story, because there's a lot of great nuggets there, but it's the fact that if you don't have proper financial advice,
Right.
you would never know these things are available to you, or you wouldn't know how to invest or how to plan for
Right.
retirement. That's one of the biggest things we promote in this podcast is just for people to have proper financial advice. There's so many people that just like, oh, I don't want to pay for it, I can do it myself.
Yeah.
All it is managing stocks, and there's so much more to it. Just the knowledge of what's out there of things that you would never find on your own. That's a great example. So
And really, to your point, in those intervening 10 years, I mean, I encouraged him to pay off the private debt first, which he did. At that time, those interest rates were higher. But I said to him, in all honesty, I don't know in your lifetime if you'll ever pay back these federal student loans. And I'm not, encouraging anybody to be a deadbeat. I just didn't know if it was, humanly possible without him selling a kidney or something like that. It's very drastic. But in the meantime, I was planning his retirement with him because we had that kind of time horizon for money to grow. So he's always had IRAs, 403Bs, investing, understanding that. And along the way, you'll pay what you can, but I was still planning for his life. My whole focus had never been everything you earn has to be towards that student loan debt repayment. It is a very difficult thing to help somebody navigate that, because we can become uni-focused on it. And there's even people I can see in when I'm looking at them with mortgages, stepping away from the student loans. They've been raised with a background of maybe a Depression era parent with a certain experience, like, even though they have a great mortgage rate, they have to pay that off. And that comes first before doing many other things that they're going to need for the future. And it
Yeah.
just amazes me, like, if you have a 3% mortgage, just pay what they're asking for and move on. Put your dollars towards
Yes.
something else that benefits you, not the bank. But they're
Yeah.
hell-bent on not even approaching retirement with a mortgage. But that's your superpower.
Yeah, well, you're playing with the house's money. So obviously I do leverage for a living, but I actually firmly believe in the power of it because, you know, you can build a real estate portfolio that will earn you
Mhm.
more than it costs you. There's lots of
Right.
things you can do. And we
Right.
see a lot of our clients or people who come to us and actually this is going to be our very next session. So this was kind of fortuitous that you brought this up, is why buying in cash is not a good idea. That's the concept, you know, is that, you know, if you're buying, let's say, $1 million home, you're putting $1 million into not having a mortgage payment, which is fine. But if you can afford the mortgage payment and you can, you know, get an interest rate, let's just say the rates come down a little bit and we're down near 5%, you can get a return of 7 to 10% over time, you know, you're losing
Right.
an astronomical amount, because when you compound that over time, those numbers grow dramatically and you're really shooting yourself in the foot. So we see clients come to us with like a badge of honor. I don't have any mortgages, or I'm just going to buy cash because it's almost like a status thing, it seems like sometimes. Or it's, you know, people later in life, but that are just very, like you said, depression era clients who just can't fathom having debt at
They
all. It
think
makes
all
them
debt is
very
bad.
uncomfortable,
Right.
even though that debt may actually be helping them gain wealth.
Right.
They just can't make that connection no matter how many times you explain it to them. So actually our next podcast session in a few weeks is going to be about actually breaking down the numbers and seeing how much is your mortgage going to cost you over 30 years if you don't take a mortgage versus if you do and then you invest that money at a certain rate of return. How much are you going to benefit by having taken the loan? So the debt is actually, you're growing your wealth because you have debt. It's an intelligent use of the debt side of your balance sheet,
Right.
because people are so used to managing the asset side and stocks and bonds and where should I put my money into different investments, and they don't realize that the debt side of their balance sheet could actually be generating income for them.
And also one other thing, which I know is controversial, like many people say, oh, but I'm not sure I'll be able to pay off the mortgage in 30 years because I'll be in my 70s or 80s, or what if I die with the debt? I'm like, there's worse things than,
Yeah.
like, dying with the debt is not a bad idea, actually, right? So
No,
the idea,
because the lender won't let the value of the asset be less than the debt.
right. So you've lived a comfortable life. The goal is not necessarily to pay off the house. I hate to say it.
Right. Yeah. But therein line is where the
Right.
emotional side of money it clouds people's decisions.
Right.
And so that's why it's important. That's why I want to make sure to invite you on today to kind of explain some of these things and understand, you know, hopefully it'll spark for the people who are listening live, and then those who will listen to the recorded session later to kind of think about, well, how do I, you know, and I'm doing the same thing as I'm listening to you talk. How do I do that? I probably have some of those tendencies also, and
We
thinking
all
about my
do.
wife and, you know, family, and yeah, exactly. We all come in with some sort of preconceived notions, but what is, if you had to choose one, what is one thing you wish people knew about financial therapy other than the fact that it actually exists?
I love the question. And I would say one thing I wish people knew about it is we don't pathologize anybody. We all have money things. We all have things we believe in from our family history, our experiences, our culture, trauma that may go back, to grandparents you never even met and their experiences. So this is just, and trauma is not like, oh my God, we went bankrupt and I was homeless for 3 years. Trauma are wounds that show up that haven't been healed. And what I wanted to say to answer your question more succinctly is that you don't have to have major financial issues, to to talk to somebody about, issues pertaining to financial therapy. They can be small wounds that, don't even impact how you organize your money, but the feeling, how you feel that you're ill at ease, that there were unresolved things. It's just really about you thinking, communicating, feeling differently about money, and making money more of a comfortable issue for you. And for that reason, I think financial therapy can benefit everybody, just like
Yeah,
speaking to
I'm ready
a
to sign
therapist.
up. Yes, please. I mean, I think everybody, like you said, everybody could benefit from it. And
We all have
yeah,
wounds about money and unresolved issues. Like if you've ever been laid off, you probably have feelings that come to the surface at times, even if you're really rocking it out in your career now. And
it's
so
funny
instead
you
of
say that.
burying
Yeah.
all of that, just to be able to have self-discovery in a relationship with yourself and money that is more at ease and enjoyable, this is the value of it. It's the same thing as with financial planning, and you said it, and I didn't pick up on it quick enough, but like, sure, you could do all these things yourself, but do you, first of all, and do you hold yourself in check? Do you make the right decisions? And I find that having a collaborative process with clients is really the most enjoyable thing. Most of my work, I would say 85% of my work with clients, is in session. I'm very collaborative. I'm teaching every step of the way. I'm listening. I want to take in your experience. We're exchanging ideas. If I'm fixing a 401k for you because the investments are off, I'm explaining why. We're just doing it right on the Zoom screen share and doing it, and you're understanding why. So this, whether it's financial therapy or financial planning, for me, it's all a collaborative process with, at the end of this, that people feel good about their money and their autonomy and what they're doing with it. And, a lot of people will say to me, oh my God, I thought this was going to be like a trip to the dentist. And I just feel so much better about things.
Sure.
That means I've done my job pretty well that day.
Yeah, for sure. And you gave a perfect example of when people get laid off. So I'll give you a little personal story here. So when I
Okay.
was fresh out of college, I worked in the advertising world in New York City for a couple years, and it was right during the dot-com bust. And so I kept getting laid off. And so now every time somebody says either that they want to have a meeting without telling me why, or that they want to meet in a room that wasn't normally occupied, I immediately think, am I getting laid off? I know I'm not. I'm in sales.
Right.
I know that's not happening, but that's my immediate thought.
You have a
Um,
trigger there.
yeah.
And it feels uncomfortable. And yeah, I think everyone has a layoff story.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I mean, when you get called by your boss into an office that has never been occupied since you worked there,
Right,
that's usually a pretty good sign that something's about to happen.
right.
But fortunately, knock on wood, we've been doing really well in the mortgage industry. So advertising is a whole different world. But so how can people find out more about financial therapy in general? You mentioned organization, like how can people get more information
Yeah,
about it?
the premier place to go to is www.financialtherapyassociation.org. This is the main place. And on it, you can do a search for a financial therapist. And note to self, I never signed up to be on it. And part of it, not to brag, but I'm a solo practitioner, and I have, both the divorce practice, financial planning, and the financial therapy. So people find me, and so I take who comes my way, but I haven't really put myself out there, and I should. But you can find financial therapists around the country, and you'll see their bios. Some come from the mental health side, and that might appeal to you, and others come from the financial planning side or financial counseling. And then you might want somebody who's also going to help you take next steps with your money, as well as, so, if you go to a mental health counselor, they're going to really be able to dig deep on the emotions, the feelings, the relationships with money, but they may not have the proper certifications to help you then invest or understand IRAs or things like that. And so it really depends like which side you want to be on. So
Yeah, and the reason why I had you on today is because you do so many of these different things and you
yeah.
can provide such a valuable service. I mean, I've seen it firsthand with many clients. We've spent a lot of time on Zoom together with clients dealing with
do.
these exact issues and trying to help them navigate it comfortably. And you know, obviously I want to make sure that people know where to find you. So
Oh, that's nice.
with that being said, here's contact information for
Oh,
Stephanie,
thank
and
you.
of course, Stephanie, I just want to thank you so much. You're a very valuable resource to people, and they can only see a glimpse of it on today's call, but I have seen it firsthand. I can vouch for you 100%, and I really think that people will benefit from checking this session out. So thank you so much for
I
joining
appreciate
us
you
today.
because one of the things I love about working with you is that you're really into the education of mortgages. And so, you know, for you to join in with one of my clients and answer their questions and have the creative thinking about like, you know, not just thinking about it like this, but here are some creative ideas to help you, you know, utilize, let's say, the money you're getting from an inheritance or from family and how to think about it with the numbers attached to it. I feel like you do a lot of the other half in that lending space that I need.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm the uncertified mortgage therapist at the moment. Maybe someday there'll be a mortgage version of what you do, but yeah, we do a lot of just guiding and holding hands and calming nerves, and you know, for people that they know that they're ready financially, but they still have hesitations, and that probably alludes to, you know, a lot of what we were talking about today. But I appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with you both today and in general, and hopefully everybody has learned something new. And next session, again, we'll be talking about buying in cash. I'm sure we'll probably be referencing this conversation and why people might want to do that, and hopefully shed some additional light. So your guidance will continue in future sessions of the podcast. So I appreciate your time, and thank you all for joining us today. And please reach out to Stephanie. She's an amazing resource, and we love collaborating together. So thank you, Stephanie. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you all next time. Take care.
Thank you, Mark.
Bye-bye.
Bye.